take umbrage at the lionization of lightweight, empty-suited, empty-headed motherfuckers like Ibram X. Kendi. I'm sorry. He's an unserious, superficial, empty-suited, lightweight.
I hate the fact that I'm a straight white male, and that's what being a progressive religious person often means.
You made me do it, John. You made me do it.
So after looking at your social media accounts, I'm afraid that you've been diagnosed with bigotry.
I don't understand. I made one joke. I don't think I'm racist.
I'm going to start by prescribing you being removed from all platforms, and then we're just going to take it day by day. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the only way to cure the wrong opinions is to have them excommunicated to the fringes of society.
What the hell? I can't even log into Twitter.
The anger from having your life ruined, mixed with society's overreaction to a minimal offense, will, by my research, cause them to be a more accepting person.
And we're rolling.
1, 2, 3, 4. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1 second, please.
Here we go.
It's this hypocritical nature, but it's also just as a member, you're just following. These are my spiritual leaders. These are the people who know what's best for me, without taking in any of the other context about why they're actually doing these things in the history.
She's talking about the experts on NPR, right?
Yeah.
Her spiritual leaders, so yeah.
Educated,
like
I was.
the way NPR just says experts say really is just like religious leaders say, church leaders say. Like, it's exactly the same. It means the same thing to me.
You guys all have great points, but you're being way, way, way too generous. John, you saying the church is hypocritical, and Sam, you
this happens every time.
Too generous. They're
You're saying you've seen it because you have actually seen this, or this is just a
so I have watched this. I have watched this part. I know that, but like I've also seen this thing play out. It
Where
happens
John says they're being too nice.
Every fucking time. It's like, no, you guys are being too nice. The Mormon Church is Satan on earth.
Yeah.
The Mormon Church participates in racism. That's my spot on John Larsen impression.
We got it now. We've been trying to land on.
We got it.
I put it like I would just put that to the background of Sweetums because we were saying that he was Sweetums from the Muppets. Oh, that's mean. I started out this podcast. I said I was watching the Blob on TV and I was watching it on Mormon Stories. But that's mean. I'll cut that out. We don't want to give people body issues.
I got Blob.
I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to figure out what my lines are with making fun of people, right? Because I got a pretty hard line. I'm not going to make fun of Kara's nose. She talks about how people make fun of it. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to be cruel or mean because that's a thing that she's got. She can't help it. So that would be mean if it feels off limits. John Larsen being really fat, I don't broach it as much as I feel the instinct to. But it's not like a thing. It's a thing he could help, you know.
Fat,
you know, like
so much of his world because they started this out with hypocrisy. So much of his world is talking about conservation, and you got to be a super conservationist and live off the land. There's no way you're doing that looking like that, John.
In my opinion, as far as Kara's nose go, like as far as big noses go, it's a rather excellent nose. Like, I've seen bad big noses, but that's not like the kind of big nose that's
people do go after her for it though. But I also don't think
but that's also like it's in the sense that people are going to just pick the thing, like when I embarrassed a communist at work, he called me fat. So there you go. And it's like, and that's things like for me is interesting because like he apologized for calling me fat, and I said, well, I appreciate it. But I didn't tell him what I really thought. It was like, frankly, I'm not offended by the part where you called me fat because that was the only part of the conversation where you told the truth.
Well, if we go back to the stuff you say, the people who always draw out and point at that stuff, and the couple of the different threads way back in the day on the feminist Mormon housewives, when I started talking to people and you push back on anything, and after a moment they would say something, they wouldn't click through your Facebook profile or something like that, and they'd say, look at you, you're some fat ponytail basement dwelling fat whatever. And I said, you better look a bit closer. No, you're some, I know what you are. And so in one of them I finally said, look, I'm not the fat. You keep saying that. Look, I'm this. And I post a picture of it, and she immediately goes, "Oh, you have a small dick. You're a small dick person who's a small dick because anybody who gets in shape like that has a small dick." And that,
You know what's
like,
funny? That person that had that interchange with you, like I don't know her, and that like she doesn't know my name. I don't remember her name. She was a stripper. That's her life.
Wow. Yeah. Well, but I mean, if you talk about like the world who gets in, like they say, don't body shame, they will all immediately body shame. Especially like if you look at people talking about incels, which we have been called incels, which I hate to break it to you, like a lot of the problems in my life were the opposite of incels problems.
I was thinking about this podcasting today because like I wanted to put this together well, but I just had half a bottle of Spanish wine. But like, because just this morning, it happens 10,000 times a day. NPR. I will either make a comment that is satirical, or I will plainly state something that is obviously true but runs against the left. And invariably somebody calls me a trumper. And every time I call their bluff, and it's just funny because it's like one of us voted for somebody with a long history of lying, associating with racists, like that we know colluded with foreign governments for their own personal gain, has a history of sexual assault. One of us voted for somebody like this. Do you want to call my bluff? Because I voted for 0 Republicans, let alone Trump. But so tell me, who did you vote for?
Speaking of which, did you guys watch that Saturday Night Live clip from last night?
No.
That I sent over? You didn't see that?
Oh, I don't know. I missed that one.
I sent it over, but it was a TikTok. So I think sometimes you guys miss one. Maybe we'll go to that, but let's hit this one first. And then not this whole thing, this one, because he's got 15 different dumb things here, but let's hit this one issue first that I brought up here. But
fucking liars. Let's read again that paragraph, shall we? Or at least the last sentence. By redefining what marriage has been for most of human history, the court will impede the ability of religious people to participate fully as equal citizens in American civil life. Let's pull that apart, shall we? In China, there is the practice of polygamy. There has been polygamy practiced in China for thousands of years. In India, there is a practice of polygamy. They've been practicing polygamy for thousands of years. In Africa, there is the practice of polygamy. They've been practicing polygamy for thousands of years.
In Africa.
What were the marital practices of the Mayans, of the Aztecs, of the Phoenicians, of the Babylonians?
Hold on, it's coming.
I don't think the Mormon lawyers actually know. They are stating a bald-faced lie. And the only way to make their statement make any sense is if you insert the word white in it to it. By redefining what white marriage has been for most of white history, then it makes sense.
There's such a load of absolute dog shit. It's such a load of shit. Like monogamy is not white.
So this is a thing that happened. Like, oh my god, the fucking polyamory. It's the I want to fuck everyone crowd. Like, will come up with every justification they could possibly think of to be like. And by the way, I don't care if you want to go fuck everyone. Go do it. Just like stop pretending that. Like those of us who want to be monogamous and not fuck everyone, stop pretending that we're the weirdos. Like we're some weird white supremacist structure. Like no, I want to be with my wife and I want to have a couple kids with her and that's nice. Fuck off. I'm not abnormal for that.
But here's the winning move, and we know it's the winning move because Chris already tried it. And it kicked off this whole podcast. And it's turning John Larsen's bullshit on himself. Define white. Do it. Do it, you coward.
You can just do like the very basic search on monogamy and see that it started thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. It actually went pretty well in line with any sort of agrarian society, because any sort of society that starts focusing on having and cultivating property, it starts becoming a better system, a better system to build a kingdom or pass on to a family that you can keep an eye on and control. and take care of offspring for longer and pass things on to the correct offspring that are for sure your offspring by being monogamous. It came naturally, 100% naturally, through any sort of society that started cultivating its own land and cultivating agrarian. And that's not white. That's not white.
Wait, Chris, are you one of those Trump-loving, retarded who read The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins? And you have an evolutionary view of human mating behavior?
Yeah,
these social constructionists, they don't like quite understand that. Like, I swear to God, they think that literally every impulse you feel, every feeling that you have is sort of just societally enforced, right? That's
what Karl Marx thought.
Because because I would say to him, like, well, okay, but like, why is there this human pull to get jealous if the woman you're with, if the man you're with goes off and fucks somebody else? How come that's like, just go through polyamorous circles? Like, one of the biggest things they deal with is be like, here's how to handle the jealousy of your wife fucking a harem of men, or your husband fucking a shitload of women, or whatever it is. And like, how do you explain that? And they'll be like, well, it's just completely a Western social construction, and you've been socialized to think that it's not okay when you're what? No, it's deeper than that, man. Like, fuck off. I don't even want to refute you with studies and shit like that. You know you're wrong.
Here's the thing: is like, 'cause I have said so many times in so many ex-Mormon world podcasts about one of the main things that led to my losing my faith was going on a mission and realizing that the whole family situation inside of Mormonism wasn't all that different. But the thing is, I can point at successful long-term Mormon marriages. I don't know any successful long-term polyamorous relationships. I point at the successful, healthy, long-term furry relationship. Like, I'm told these things exist. I've never seen one, right? Now, like, if you want to tell me that some Mormons are nightmares of depression and abuse, I know. I was raised in one. But I have seen the successful Mormon family. I've seen lots of them. I have not seen the successful fucking leftist family. I haven't seen it. There's like this
Look at this.
postmodern, destroy all traditional norms. I haven't seen it work. They keep telling me it's true, but I've never seen it.
Happy Noam Chomsky Day.
Listen to this. Drawing on the work of Esther Bosserup, Goody notes that the sexual division of labor varies in intensive plow agriculture and extensive shifting horticulture. In plow agriculture, farming is largely men's work and is associated with private property. Marriage tends to be monogamous to keep the property within the nuclear family. Close family, endogamy, are the preferred marriage partners to keep property close within the group. A molecular genetic study of global human genetic diversity argued that sexual polygyny was typical of human reproductive patterns until the shift to sedentary farming communities approximately 10,000 to 5,000 years ago in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas.
Damn.
Whoops.
Well, here's the crazy thing. Like, how come nobody ever points out, like, evolutionarily, so polygamy or polyamory or what, just fucking whoever you want to fuck, that benefits men about 1 million times more than it benefits women. I don't know why the feminists aren't jumping on this shit. Like, because you have the women are the choosers, but they're also incredibly vulnerable when they're pregnant or when when they've reproduced or whatever. Men, like, they can like shoot their seed, like, just by numbers. Like, you could just go knock up like 1,000 women. You got
my roommate was a feminist PhD historian wrapping up her feminist PhD historian crap. Because I remember talking to her, and like, this was very early in my switch from going, like, because, you know, up until then, like, if somebody asked me, are you a feminist? I'm like, well, yeah, I believe in equal rights. I was that kind of stupid. And I remember her, like, somehow the conversation of pornography came up. She's like, well, pornography shouldn't be allowed because it's objectifying, blah, 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 all that dumb stuff. And I said, you know, I remember saying, like, I don't know. I think for me, the fantasy of pornography, the really harmful fantasy at the root of pornography is the idea that you can have sex without consequences.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of basic and pithy. And
There's no
she
free
was
lunch.
totally flabbergasted and just started going on about how women in Africa are having their clits cut off. Like every conversation with feminists ever.
That's what a part of it is. Like the societies that do that really fall in to polyamory are way less stable. You really get a real problem with incels, which is a real problem of societies across history, that you get a bunch of unmarried young angry men, and those become the problem. And it really isn't
nothing
like
to do and nowhere to go and no prospects.
Incel is a real problem in that world. If you really get down to a thing where 67, 50, 100 different women go to one oligarchic male, it's just so dumb.
But like in our nearest genetic relatives are chimpanzees, and like it's like 17-1, like the male breeding ratio. Like that's just kind of how that works with our primates.
Yeah, the other point, because from the very start of this, one of the things that we were pointing out, the thing I tried to point out to Larsen when we had that initial talking that kicked off this whole thing, was I was trying to talk to Larsen about how he weaves in bullshit things like critical theory. This is one of those moments right here. It's barely even weaved in. He goes on a rant, making the wild claims that come out of things like critical race theory, saying something like, this is just whiteness, like monogamy is whiteness. That is an out and out bullshit claim from those theories.
God damn it, what is whiteness? Like, where is the line? Like, and tell me, like, who, like, because,
we got Christopher from Before the Crow's Nest.
Hang on.
Hang
on. Chris,
I told Chris,
you go get my guitar. I'm going to go get a guitar.
I don't play.
You have all those guitars?
I'll play. I play like the piano and the drums. I'd be on that kit behind Jared.
Oh, well, good, because I don't play drums.
Oh, nice.
Oh, man. What was I going to say?
How's it going?
Sorry, we were talking about the critical race theory saying that monogamy is whiteness. Christopher popped in right.
Wait,
when
what?
We were hitting it. Well, did you see that in the last Larsen thing? He says monogamy comes from whiteness. The only way you can interpret that people are trying to say that monogamy as traditional is whiteness. Like,
everybody's got guitars in their shots now.
Yeah, you gotta have one.
Oh, is it the white ex-mormon guitar show? Oh, good. I love this one.
Plus, I'm like really, really, really fucking good at guitar, and I just want everyone to know it.
You want me here to play? You want to hear me play Nirvana?
Dude, that was so. There's this guy, dude, the best guitar player I've ever met in my life. I met on my mission, and like I was pretty high on myself on my mission because I met all the other people that could play guitar, and I was like, I think I'm not like great, but I think I'm the best guitar player on my mission. That's kind of cool, I guess. It's just that everybody else isn't that great. And then I met Elder Rodriguez, and we had a bus ride together, and he pulled out his guitar. He's like, "What can you play?" And he's like, all like, I've noticed this with like gym guys when they meet a guy who's like fat or just like insecure about coming to the gym, they're actually really nice to him. They take him under their wing, and they're like, "Here's how you lift," or whatever. That's how most guys I've met who are really fucking good at guitar are. He's like real nice. He listens to me play my thing, and then I was like, "Yeah, show me what you can play." And he's like, "Well, what do you want me to play?" And I just randomly named this. There wasn't a thing I could name that he couldn't play, and he was amazing. And he's like, he made a joke. He's like, you want to know how if somebody's really bad at guitar? And I was like, how's that? And he just started playing Nirvana. It was "Come As You Are." He just started.
Yeah, what you gonna do? But what most podcasters do when you're as smart as us is you put a bunch of books behind you. You're supposed to have like a big bunch of books in a library shelf. Like, look at all this that's in my brain. It's all in my brain here, man.
I got a comic. I got the Eric July comic.
That just means that you hate women.
Kutuzov. Yeah, I do. Well, I do hate women, but that's just
what's the second? What's that phone book in your hand?
It's Kutuzov. So I got this one because he's
Kutuzov.
Yeah, he's the general that beat Napoleon, and I got it because when I finished War and Peace, I was like, okay, Tolstoy has he hates Napoleon and he has a huge boner for Kutuzov. Like he talks about how all of the historians shit on Kutuzov, and he's
I don't
like,
know from Kutuzov.
yeah, I know. So I was like, okay, I want to know how much of that is historical. But I haven't started it yet because I got other shit to finish.
All right, are you guys ready to see this?
Oh,
this
I'm
was
ready.
released-
2 hours. Let's begin.
This was released on Saturday Night Live last night.
Oh God! Wait,
Christ!
Can you hear it?
I think.
All the way
See,
up.
like, I think I watched this when I was distracted, and I was like, "Wait, what? I didn't get the joke." And then now, if you tell me it's Saturday Night Live, like, oh, now I know why I didn't get the joke because it wasn't funny.
It has to be.
It
doggy
sounds
like
really
this, 'cause you,
fucked up.
well, yeah, it has to be that way because it's just filmed on a film because I can't. Get
Oh,
the
that's
live
right.
clip.
Film on a TV.
So the whole entire skit is that they realize that they're screwed with their election picks on the Democratic side. But I think it's kind of weird because it's like I mean, not like Saturday Night Live hasn't just signaled where they're at for years, but they're just coming straight out saying like,
Yeah, it's pretty
yeah,
blatant.
we're Democrats and we want to find the best Democrat to beat DeSantis or Trump. But the whole thing is them admitting that all their candidates stink and they're making it like it's a horror movie. Which I kind of can't believe they're doing that.
Well, I can believe it because if you remember a few years back, like literally, election happened, Trump wins, and like literally American Horror Story, their whole season was like them freaking out about political shit. Just continuing.
I watched that season, and I only watched it once, but as I recall, I felt like they were pretty fair. Because I remember like what did she say? The lesbian couple where they're having the fight, and one of them says to the other's like, you voted for the libertarian or something like that. And she says, "You promised you would never bring that up again." And I remember thinking like that was really funny. That was like genuinely really good. Like both sides.
Rob Schneider very recently pointed to the moment Saturday Night Live was over, and he said it was right after Trump lost. They put Catherine McKinnon or whatever her name is up on the stage, just earnestly singing the Leonard Cohen song, and it was just sad. And he said, "I was just watching and saying, please tag it with a joke. Please tag it with a joke. Please tag it with a joke." And there was no joke. And he said that was just the end. That was it.
Yeah.
That's
kind of so. Twitter is one of the. It's one of the signs of how fucking odd everything is that you have me, Rob Schneider, and Kevin Sorbo all retweeting the same shit. Like
I think where I found out Jim Brewer. Jim Brewer is like a conservative Christian.
I know. I've retweeted Kevin Sorbo so many times. It's one of the funniest things because the first time I ever drank alcohol was I told my friends I want to get really fucked up and watch God's Not Dead. That would be the funniest thing ever. And we did, and we made fun of Kevin Sorbo, and now we're on the same team, I guess. What the fuck, clown?
It is so weird. Jared, all I can say is disappointed.
Wait a minute. This isn't my world. Disappointed!
Oh, I'm getting my window open.
Are you having a bunch of criminality going on?
Oh my god, downtown Salt Lake City. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I've lived in this neighborhood more or less for more than 10 years now. I mean, like, I walk fast. I am 10 minutes from Temple Square, probably less. I remember 10 years ago when I first lived in this neighborhood, the homeless population comprised of about 5 old schizophrenics who screamed at the sky.
And you knew their names.
Harmless. And yeah, basically. And we recognized them. We're like, okay, yeah. And like you might see them sleeping in your alley, but okay, whatever. Like I remember a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I sent you a message on it was like 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I walked 1 block to the 7-Eleven and counted 40 people camping on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And the other
Trump's
thing is
America.
yeah, exactly. Trump's America. Because the other thing I'm noticing is that the homeless population is getting much younger because it used to be old guys. It's much younger and there's way more women.
Oh, man, I've noticed that too because I go to a specific spot like 7th and State, and there's a lot of them camped out there right now.
That
So
7th
many more
and State, have you noticed on 8th and State on that stretch where they've torn up all of the grass on the strip and have put nightmarish spiky rocks to stop people from sleeping there?
Yeah, I noticed.
Capitalism!
Like, you remember Brazil, the home security system where they would make the concrete wall with the broken glass on top?
They cement shards of glass.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what Salt Lake City. It's like you know, I love Brazil, but one thing about Brazil I don't want to see is the fucking glass security system. But that's what we're getting at. It's like, you could tell, how do you stop them? Spiky stuff.
So you could tell how rich somebody was by what type of spiky material they had. Like that was the poor people had the glass shards cemented.
Bottles,
Some people had barbed wire. They had a little bit more money. Some people, a little bit more money, had razor wire, and then some people had razor wire and electric fence.
And then the next layer was immediately inside the fence, you would plant a row of that Barbie plant, nightmare plant. But you had to have a landscaper for that to keep the plant under control. But the whole idea is like, so if you made it over the concrete, over the glass, broken glass, you would land in a thorny bush.
It really don't get in there.
End of an empire, man. Well, just last week I went to go help you move your couch, and we tried to sit on three of us tried to sit on a bench outside, and we couldn't because it had the homeless things in it.
Yeah, it had the anti-homeless sleeping thing.
Why would you be homeless? Because we've had this in Idaho Falls. Like, we have this growing homeless issue, and it's nowhere near Salt Lake, but like, it's still like an increase from what we're used to. And like, we had this whole issue where like the mayor was like, I don't know what to do. I can't just make it illegal for homeless people to camp like along the river or whatever. And we're all like, yeah, but you could just make it illegal for anyone to camp, because nobody camps along the river. It's like camping in a public park. It's weird. But now we've got a bunch of homeless people hanging out there, and it always makes me wonder, like, why the fuck would anybody be homeless here?
I have heard from multiple, like anecdotally, but multiple different sources, people in city government, local police, whatever, they are literally bussed in from California.
And they still have the problem there.
Yeah.
But
sorry, we're like a mini's Martha's Vineyard. Homeless Martha's Vineyard.
Trevor Noah said on the Daily Show a couple years ago, like, since I've been here from South Africa, maybe you can do the accent there, Jared. I've been pulled over 5 times. And I'm like, I went down to my band practice at 4th and 4th, right by that park there. I always mix them up. Liberty Park.
That's Pioneer.
Pioneer Park. I always say it. I always say the wrong one. And when I was driving there, I got pulled over 20 times in a year because that's where they think.
That's where they bridge where you come off the exit.
Yeah,
right by that park is terrible.
They think that's where you're going to go get drugs or something like that. And you drive in just to go practice your band. And every single night they come up with some other excuse. I'm a kind of a crappy driver, so it wasn't the worst of excuses. But like, if I just like barely make a lane change too fast, or I take some corner or something like that, they pull me over, and they pull over again, and they didn't care what I looked like or anything like that.
It is
get pulled over in those regions.
There's a person I know that, and Chris probably knows who I'm talking about because I mentioned it before. But there's a person I know who drinks and drives so much that it's one of the major miracles of my life that they have never been popped for drunk driving. And yet I know that Chris Hanna is not a drinker. He does not have a substance abuse problem of any kind. And yet he is such a terrible driver, and yet he has not been in any accidents. He is a remarkably bad driver. Like, I mean,
it's because I drive like a granny.
Like, Chris is my hero in so many ways. Like, I don't have heroes until people die. But I will say Chris is the wisest person I've ever met. I'll put that right on the table right now. He's the wisest person.
Those things, I'm gonna die in a wreck next week.
Terrible driver. Almost as bad as my mom.
What makes me different than most males of my age is I openly admit that I am a terrible driver. And
That's
does
part of what makes you the wisest person I know. Because like, if you were like everybody else, you're like, no, I'm good at this. Then it'd be like, well, you're a shithead. But you are wise enough to know I shouldn't be allowed to do this. Here I am.
What are you saying about your wife?
Oh, she does all the driving. She's the better.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I only like driving if I'm alone because I'm only in charge of my own life at that point.
I love driving. I will
I do alone.
always take the option to drive, especially if it's a road trip. I love driving.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
I suck. One time I drove down the wrong lane, and so I flipped a U-turn and went down the other wrong lane.
That's worse than my friend Josh. He halfway, my friend in high school, he halfway ran a red light, felt bad about it, put the car in reverse. Needed the red light.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves where it's like, no. You've already screwed up. Just
go.
The error.
If Kevin were here, he could tell us a story of when I got high-centered on a rock in the middle of a yard. Anyway,
it's like sports where it's like play till the whistle. Wait for the whistle. Just keep going.
But I am pretty good, knock on wood, at not getting wrecks very often. It's because I know I suck, so I drive pretty slow.
So because that's the thing I'll say. Like, you're not aggressive. You're not aggressive. You don't speed. So that's the stuff that saves you. But like,
You don't speed? How the fuck do you fit into Utah? My God, I go 10, 12 over the speed limit, and I'm getting passed by like 10 miles an hour.
Aggressive.
Whenever I go to Utah.
I'm always pretty sure to be right in there. And it's partially, I keep getting pulled over all the time too, but that's just because I'm bad at staying in lanes.
That's my problem too.
Lane travel. That's one of his major things, lane travel.
That's my problem too.
If only Elon Musk's stupid cars would start working at driving themselves. Because, like, that's things I've always said. Like, I can't wait for the robots to take over driving.
My car right now has lane recognition, and it helps me.
The problem with that, the cars do drive themselves very well, and I used to work for Tesla, so I have plenty of experience with those. It's the fucking people activating the robots that don't know what to do. Like, even turning on the robot and paying attention to it, people are fucking stupid about it. They're really good.
I guess so. It's like, because like one day talking about my curse, we were talking earlier about being ex-Mormons, and if there's a Mormon God, you get a curse, and mine is that I can't make coffee. I'm not going to tell you because I'm embarrassed how many times I have set the coffee maker to make coffee, forgetting to put the fucking pot.
Just pour the water in the back, and it's just like boiling air, and you've got a pot of.
Well, that's better than making coffee onto the counter, onto the floor.
That's true.
I'm tired this morning. Let's go all the way.
We should be the ex-Mormons that admit that everything that ever bad happens to us is because we left Mormonism.
It's
true.
Like
a podcast about, this happened to me. I should have stayed in Mormonism.
I
know a lot of people that
first act of fornication. That's where it all started.
I mean, it really was for me. That's how I met my wife.
Here we go.
2 hours in, we're getting there.
I like this little thing where the girl can't do the math very well. This is kind of funny.
We're laughing at Saturday Night Live. What a change.
The thing is, like, if it was self-aware that they just can't realize that maybe if there's nobody who's better than the other candidate, you then choose the other candidate. Maybe some people go that way, or no candidate. But I don't know that they have that self-awareness, because I think they still have the vote blue no matter who mentality.
But like, because like the Babylon Bee, because I'm an atheist and I like comedy and I like satire. So one of the things I like is good satire about Christianity. And it's the weirdest thing that I have to go to the Babylon Bee to get it.
You used to get stuff like that from the Onion,
It used to get it from the Onion because, like, have you guys seen that thing where it's like, biblical researchers discover that Cain's rejected offering was kale? Brilliant.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff riffing on people just kind of being half into it on Sundays and stuff.
It's sort of the thing you broached it last time, where it's the Norm Macdonald axiom of you have to love something in order to be able to make fun of it properly. And the Babylon Bee is, I think, a Christian, as far as I know.
You're impersonating. You're nailing it, because The thing about why Saturday Night Live has not been funny is that we can feel your bigotry. It's the
contrived.
subtext is the
Part of the reason you have to love the thing is because you have to be able to sit with it. You have to be able to watch
Yeah.
it. You have to be able to know it. You have to be able to know the
Like,
quirks.
I've
You can't even
mentioned it
pick out a
before
quirk.
about because one of my favorite shows ever is Squidbillies, and
Oh, hell yeah.
Squidbillies is 100% about satirizing white rednecks in Georgia. But you can tell
But they
that it's
love
made by
them.
people who love white redneck Georgian culture.
You
and
can-
they're
you can
not
tell that
they're
through-
okay with loving it.
You can tell that through
despite all its
Rusty.
faults.
Speaking of one of those,
Rusty, because like Rusty's this character that he's the character. He's
the
sometimes a
son.
dumb
He's the
character, but
teenage son.
he's usually the character that like you.
He's
see
the
things
moral
through and-
center of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
so speaking of that, and I wonder if Jonathan's going to do it because I think I can kind of do a pretty good Gordon B. Hinckley, and that's because I used to sit with him. I used to watch him all the time, and I used to do it on my mission. But I need the face changer, the thing that he's going to make. But one of the worst impersonations that we've seen in years past was the Alec Baldwin Trump one because it was just kind of
yeah.
Well,
that's
he's just
exactly
an
what
angry
Norman's
guy or
talking
something like that.
about.
But speaking of that, did you see that weirdo like on Instagram just this last week? He celebrated his 1-year anniversary from when he shot the girl.
Wait, what?
Like,
On Instagram, he put up a picture and it goes 1 year ago today. It was a picture of the girl that he shot. Alec Baldwin.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. How's that?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, can we mention, because Kyle Dunnigan, unbelievable impressionist.
Mm-hmm.
But his first miss, his Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
It's just sad.
You can't do the voice.
I don't know
It's
if I've heard
weepy
that
Bill Burr. It's just Bill Burr sad instead of angry. The script, A+.
He kind of can't do the Kermit voice very well either.
Yeah, he can't. But also, yeah, exactly. Because it really, to me, it just sounded like his Bill Burr, but sad.
Yeah.
I can see sad Bill Burr as Jordan Peterson.
Well, yeah, but Bill Burr is Boston.
One of the things I love, because I think if he can't do an impersonation.
Jordan Peterson is what is Upper Alberta?
Oh yeah, he's from Alberta. He worked in Toronto, right?
Idaho is halfway to Alberta. Jared, explain.
Yeah, I mean Jared does it.
I don't know anything about Canada. Okay, I just listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson and I like him. That's all.
You better not interact with those snow beaners. When
it never stops being funny.
One of the funny things that somebody like Kyle Dunnigan does is if sometimes when he can't do an impersonation, he just leans into like a bad or wrong impersonation. Like when he does a Xi Jinping and he just does a Sylvester Stallone accent or Xi Jinping or something like that. And I actually think that's what would be really funny because Jonathan Streeter, Christopher, he's been going around and like making some good kind of even better than Kyle Dunnigan does them faces of like the prophets and all sorts of stuff. We're maybe going to start riffing on that stuff. But if we come up with one that nobody can do the impersonation of, what the joke should be is they should have just some outrageously stupid voice that doesn't fit that face. You know what I mean? Like if nobody can do Russell M. Nelson very well, somebody should be doing like a Sylvester Stallone.
I doing like something completely off the wall, just wrong.
I'm Russell M. Nelson. What you want? You know, something like that. You know.
Did any of you guys watch back when British comedies were on public television, the show Allo Allo?
I know.
It's like it was a British comedy, and the setting of the comedy is that it was a French cafe during the Nazi occupation.
Did you just use a Farsi accent to say that?
Allo Allo. Well, no, the reason is because in the show, like it was brilliant what they did because the show was so stupid. But the way they dealt with the language thing was so brilliant because it was all British actors. But like whatever language they were supposed to be speaking in, they just did a terrible accent. And so they did these hilarious scenes where it was like, it was supposed to be the French lady translating for the British airman, who bailed out over France. And so she would just slip back and forth from a terrible like Cockney accent, into a terrible stereotypical French accent, and the Italian and I mean, it was stupid but brilliant, where it's like, you just do the stupidest, most stereotypical accent, and that's what you do instead of subtitles, because, this show had Italians and Germans and French and English, but it was all played by British actors.
I think my
So it was-
grandpa watched that, and it was one of those shows that I never got, and I think it came in between like Keeping Up Appearances and like False Powers and stuff. And yeah, I never got that as a kid.
Stupid,
That's
but brilliant.
That's what I would do whenever. So when I was in the MTC, what I would do if I didn't know the Portuguese word for what I was saying, I would just say it in like a really shitty, stereotypical Mexican accent. I'd just be like, podemos convidar você para you should join the church, okay?
Yeah, it's amazing how easily that you can get away with it.
I know.
Like,
It was great
I
because
forget how embarrassed I was when I worked at the Mexican grocery store. That when Chris was the HR manager of a Mexican grocery store, and one day, like I'm like, you know, my uncle died, and I needed to go to a funeral, and I'm like, Chris, what's the Spanish word for funeral? It's like funeral.
Yeah.
Oh fuck.
I had that just the other day. But I was telling my friends that I made some joke about Italian, like you can't speak Italian. He's like, you know, and he's like, that's just a Family Guy joke. You can't actually speak Italian. And I was like, I speak fluent Italian. And he goes, say a thing in Italian. I'm like, tell me what to say. And he goes, say fiscal responsibility. And I was like, responsabilità fiscale. And it was just like, oh my god, that's so confident. Is that right? And we checked it and I was like, yeah, look, it's right, but it's a Latin-based language. It's pretty.
I always thought it was a funny phenomenon. Like if you were in Mexico and you came across something like Skittles or Snickers, and you had to order the Skittles or Snickers, but you didn't know how to say it to make them understand you. Because if you just said, "Give me the Snickers" or "Give me the Skittles," they'd be like, "What?" So you'd have to like, how are they pronouncing this? Give me the sneakers. And then they're like, what? Sneakers. What? Oh, Snikers. Like, whoa.
Snikers.
So you guys did the thing of putting the American accent to it, but you did it wrong. Like you did the thing, like you almost got there. But
there's a fancy name for this in linguistics. I can't remember what it is, but it's the thing like, so Americans like talking about white American Mormon corridor culture. Like Chris remembers the 80s when like it was maybe 50-50, if that's being generous, that your average white American could pronounce jalapeno, right? Mm-hmm. and so there was like this almost like PSA, like this big movement of like explaining to the gringos that little squiggles over the N.
Jalapeno?
Enye, yeah.
Jalapeno,
right? But so then there's this thing, it's like, so they work so hard to bang that into the American heads. So then along comes a new kind of pepper, the habanero. And what do the Americans do? Habanero, right? And so like a local vodka maker made an habanero vodka, and they printed like 10,000 labels with an Enye, and they got so sick of people going, and they're like, yeah, we know, we use 10,000 labels.
That's funny. Here's this. Let's this one. I imagine you guys will go off trying to copy this, but we'll see.
And a deep Irish accent comes out of it.
Come here to me if I can eat it. Like, let me bring you back to see me mother, and I'll show you around the farm where I live. Show you the horses and the cats and the dogs, and I'll make you me wife. I'm sure I will.
She's saying
when
Irish accent.
Opens his mouth, and a deep Irish accent comes out of it.
Come here to me if I can eat it. Like, let me bring you back to see me mother, and I'll show you around the farm where I live. Show you the horses and the cats and the dogs, and I'll make you me wife. I'm sure I will. I'll come down here and fucking get knocked round the head now. Come round here, come round there. I'll fucking rinse that man, yeah. Yeah, fucking tell you now.
When a man.
Half of those were just he was like crazy out of breath.
I think
one of my all-time favorite English vernaculars is Newfoundlander. You guys ever listen to Newfoundlanders? Mm-hmm. Let's not dig it up. People can go off on their own rabbit holes of YouTubing Newfoundlanders speaking English. So
yeah, we gotta get to Mormon Stories.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Mormons in Newfoundland, just a lot of cod. Well, not anymore, not since the middle 90s.
One last thing, just to show it and prove it here. Oh,
Let's talk about this. A picture on his Instagram 1 year to the day that he.
Yeah, wait. So that
No,
see,
like,
like this is one of those things where I'm like, is this somebody joking? But he actually did this.
he really did it. Yep.
She got nice arms.
I was gonna say that.
Right?
Absolutely amazing arms.
And so he posted
So
just a
they're
picture
like,
of her behind the
yeah,
camera, and
she's
then just
fucking hot.
What is the caption? Oh, just 1 year ago
I was
today.
gonna say, yeah.
the caption
No,
1 year ago
like,
today.
Boss
dot,
is
dot, dot.
Boss
says had. Come on, bro.
God damn.
Come on.
Bill probably doesn't have them anymore.
Come on.
Can someone explain to me what the fuck is wrong with Alec Baldwin?
Is he out of his fucking
He's
mind?
out of his fucking mind.
1 year ago today, ... I killed someone.
So
I mean,
I don't know. Like,
it is really weird.
yeah.
When you accidentally kill a friend, that's got to be like traumatizing. And
Yeah.
the
so
way
let's,
you believe in,
let's
like
principle
crackles
of
and head
charity.
and
Then.
a
Let's
year later, that's
principle
gotta
of
feel
charity.
weird.
Like, if I principle of charity, he had no idea. Like, the fact that that bullet was in that gun and that was a live round. Like, he had confidence in his crew. You know,
Did they ever figure
you know,
that
like,
out? Because I've worked with live guns in theater, and like
the trial is coming. I
that's it.
I
It's
think
like, I
there's
was
going
willing
to
pass
come.
out. Like it's.
I think
That's
it's
hard to
going to
do.
come down to a chain of custody issue about live rounds.
Yeah, it's
Probably.
gotta.
I think that's what it's going to come down to. But I'm so like, but if I principle of charity, Alec Baldwin,
Isn't
like,
it so
this-
weird? So if
this
you
is-
think about that first year that you were talking about where they're pretty fair, I don't think they were very fair because it straight went into that Mueller stuff and talking about always for sure with dealing with Russians. Half their skits, every single opening Saturday Night Live skit for a year, 2 years was Trump colluding with Russians and spending that time doing that sort of thing.
Also, he's a racist.
He's a racist who's colluding with Russians, and that was just the thing of every single skit. But half of what they were doing is like, I'm about to go to jail. I'm about to go to jail. I'm about to go to jail. And imagine that. Fast forward a couple years, the person who's shot and killed somebody and might be going to jail is Alec Baldwin. And
I was
it's
about
so
to make
weird.
a joke about SNL. They were all jokes about how Jared Kushner is too stupid to broker a deal where the United Arab Emirates accepts Israel's sovereignty and reality. But then I realized they don't know that much about the world.
Racist, and they're dismissive of
If I like turn on any episode with John Larsen, like what's the option?
Racist!
Like just landing right on that word right there.
people they don't care about. Which, I mean, the Indian civilization is the oldest or one of the oldest civilizations dating back thousands of years of brilliant philosophical, scientific,
Shut the fuck
governmental,
up.
human progress. And the church routinely ignores that billion plus people who live that
Name
religion
one.
today and its rich and fascinating history. They will get in front of you and say with a straight face, our definition of marriage, even though we know, as you guys brought up, that it hasn't been their definition of marriage ever, because like Kara pointed out in 2000, either 3 or 5, Oakes declared very clearly that both of his wives, the one who had passed away and the one he's married to, were his eternal companions.
I don't get why they get.
Not real. Like,
I don't get why they get so up in their heads about eternal companions. Like it really doesn't. I get why they get in their heads about the polygamy that was actually happening in life.
I know. That's a crazy thing. Is that like all of my ex-Mormon friends, at least Mormons, still practice polygamy.
It's
okay, but like
it's only
on paper, maybe.
It's I thought about it for a second. It's really only weird for me because the ex-Mormons I see having a problem with eternal polygamy are now in polyamorous marriages. And the people I've known before who have problems with eternal marriage is still the same reason they have problems with polygamy or polyamory or any of that kind of stuff. It's my spouse is with someone else and not me. That's always the problem. And so if you're in a polyamorous marriage and you've gotten past that, I think your argument about eternal marriage being a big old woe is kind of moot. I have a cat that looks just like that.
Except they're trying to hold feet to fire or whatever. But
well, yeah.
It is unambiguous that the church believes in polygamy today and that most of the world has engaged in alternative marital arrangements to what these guys are saying are traditional.
But monogamy is traditional. Monogamy is a traditional. Yeah.
Traditional from where? Where did the tradition spring? Because I have arguments where it wasn't the original form of a family unit. So where did that tradition? What? Give me
It
your.
wasn't the original, but we pulled it up earlier. It goes back 10,000 years.
Eh.
In a bunch of different places. But that's-
If it only goes back 10,000 years, I'm sorry, humanity goes back 3.5 million.
For sure, but 10,000 is long enough for a tradition.
This is one of those difficult things. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, when was it that we stopped being apes and became the thing that separates
And
us
doesn't
from the
matter.
apes? You know, like, well, because like it happened, but like the way that everybody, like, and John Larsen talks about this is like, oh no, this is unnatural. This happened there. It's like it's just not that simple. It's not.
Well, what's not simple, what's not clean is that yes, the polyamory of the Indians is traditional over there, and yes, monogamy is traditional, but it's not just a white construct. It's traditional in all sorts of places all over the world, and it worked for different societies for different times. It's just
it's pretty safe to say that anytime anybody says X behavior is an X racial or ethnic tradition, it's okay to just replace whatever ethnicity with humanity. In fact, today I got in a fight on fucking NPR about some stupid NPR article about some lady who's like, as an Asian American, we don't talk about sex. And I said, well, how perfectly racist of you. And of course, all the wise brains came to explain to me that, oh, no, actually, Asians just don't talk about sex. Okay, fucking racist. Like, what a stupid thing to say.
But this goes back to that Smithsonian thing where they made all those extra claims that something was white. Like monogamy's not white. It's not like a white construct. They don't own it. Like Europe came through Europe.
There's also no such thing as a white person.
Yeah, no, that's true too.
It's a social construct.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are the white people? And where is the line? Like, have you ever seen people from Kazakhstan? Or like some Uzbekis or some Turkish, like, or Borat. Well, but I mean, like the actual people where you're like people from Georgia, where like Central Asia, where like, what are they? Because they're very close to the actual Caucasus, where the actual Caucasians come from.
Yeah, that was right in like those Kyrgyzstani mountains.
You know who's a Caucasian? You know who's a Caucasian? The Boston Marathon bomber. The Tsarnaev brothers, those are Dagestanis. They're very close to the Caucasus. That's what a Caucasian is.
I saw one of
Are
those
they
recent-
white? According to racists that insist that this shit matters, apparently so.
I saw one of those recent pictures on the ex-mormon Facebook channel of Jesus, like, oh, this is what experts say Jesus looked like, and he looks sub-Saharan African, and like, well, he's from
Kanye,
he's not from America. I was like, do you think that everybody that's not from America is sub-Saharan? Are those the only two classifications of people?
Kanye,
white Americans and sub-Saharan Africans?
You never have to like stop and go very far for like to see the people who are clutching their pearls about what Kanye is saying. And then have them just like verify what he's saying. They go, "We are the real Jews," and then you just go and like talk to any of these guys when they want to like piss off a white Christian.
I made this analogy when Chris and I went on the Marty show, but I'm going to repeat it, which is like, and it's something I've repeated my whole life, and it's been confirmed to me when I've had the opportunity to confirm it, which is like, like I was driving for Lyft, and I gave a ride to this guy from the Dominican Republic, and we got on the conversation about politics and race and wokeism and all this crap. And I made the whole analogy about how, like, if you fill a room with 50 Dominicans and 50 Haitians and bring in a white racist from the South and say, what do you see? He'll say, I see about 100 Black people. But if you bring in a Haitian and a Dominican, they will both tell you, I see about 50 Dominicans and about 50 Haitians. Because to them, there's a difference. To us, we don't know. To them, it's everything. Like, look it up. The whole Dominican Haitian racism thing is a big issue. But they're all just Black people. They're all just BIPOCs. in the stupid
I know.
Marxist world.
That's one of my wife's uncles is from Honduras, and he lives in West Jordan, and he gets so pissed when people think that he's Mexican. And like I'm like, okay, man, chill out a little bit, because like there's nothing wrong. A, there's nothing wrong with being Mexican, and B, like most people who have dark skin and speak Spanish around here are from Mexico, so it's. Like,
I've made the jokes a bunch
but
of
he's
times.
like, no, fuck you. I'm Honduras. I'm Honduran.
I do feel bad because and I have made the mistake a couple of times. Where I'll admit I've fallen into this, and you guys will remember the wonderful South Park episode where they absolutely reference this. And Chris, I don't know, have you run into this where you'll mistake a Persian for a Mexican? And they don't like that. Well, but like, because that's the thing is like that. There's a big overlap in a certain look.
I made the jokes a bunch of times, but so I served my mission in Mexico. I speak Mexican more than I speak Spanish. My girlfriend is Venezuelan, and I frequently make the joke of like, you see the two of us walking down the street, and you ask a John Larsen flubbers up and says, "Hey." So he gets put on a game show, like one of those game shows. Which one of these
people hates Mexicans?
Which one of these persons racist towards Mexicans and wants all those people to go home?
Which one of these people
for
would
$1
rather live in a
million
country with no Mexicans?
For $1 million that you can give the Bernie Sanders campaign or something like that.
It's he's never watching this, right?
Yeah. Majority of Latinos say skin color impacts opportunity in America. It was so funny. This Pew Research thing puts it in America. Go to Mexico. They're talking about this in Mexico. Like,
I've read it before, the whole Neymar thing, because Neymar is one of the top paid soccer players in the world. And he's a Brazilian guy. And like 6 years ago at the World Cup, or 8 years ago now, I can't remember exactly what it was. And some woke reporter asked him, like, tell me about the discrimination you've experienced in your career. And he's like, why would I experience discrimination?
I'm fucking
Neymar. Because you're black. And he's like, but I'm not black. And if you look it up, there's this whole thing. It's like, is Neymar black? It's like, God damn it. That should tell you. That's the answer. Doesn't fucking matter.
It's funny to me because
he's an amazing dribbler.
When I was on my mission, Neymar was like the most, he probably still might be like the most famous soccer player in the whole world.
He's the highest paid soccer player. He's not performing as well as his salary.
Well,
his performance is not commensurate with his pay. I'll say that.
When I was
Brazilian, I'm talking about the World Cup is less than a month away. This is my life.
Oh, I'm excited.
Here we go.
These are white supremacist dogs.
Why is it always like
you always start right there?
I keep getting it like right at the words, don't I?
Dog whistles. And to
white
believe that
supremacist dog whistles.
I immediately texted you after I saw this. I immediately texted the group chat and I was like, fuck, somebody taught John Larsen the term dog whistle.
I bet it was Kara.
Somebody.
I love the thing about dog whistles is like dog whistles are only supposed to be audible to the dogs.
In the imaginary universe where John Larsen actually wants to hear criticism. Okay, John, there are hundreds of forms of marriage. I'm drunk, so I can't remember exactly what you said, so I don't want to misquote you. Are they all equally good? Or are there some kind of value judgments to be made between them? If so, what are they and how do you make those judgments?
You want me to
If
answer
not,
it?
are they all equally valid? If your answer is that, then bullshit.
So would you like me to answer it? Because I know
Yeah.
I know the answer. So the answer is that how closely do they resemble Western, specifically American?
I like your questions too. These
And
are all good questions that John will never answer.
So if they resemble Western monogamy, then they start out being inferior. But then if it's like some African tribe, then I mean they get a pass. It's sort of it all comes down to this standpoint epistemology of like my specific tribe thinks that it's good to be monogamous, and then John Larsen would be like, yes, no, that is superior to my white Western polyamory or whatever. He'll be a cuck to whatever he needs to be a cuck to.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Just take a survey, John. Where in the world does polygamous marriage actually predominate today? And then let's just take a survey about things like, let's overlap those things with things like women's rights, freedom of the press.
You want to know what? So you want to know where polyamory happens the most, or polygamy happens the most, is in fucking dystopian novels. Every dystopian leader has like 8 wives. All right, so like your version of utopia is most people's dystopia.
Wait, what's John's vision of utopia that y'all think? Because I mean, I listen to these things, and like Chris more so knows where my brain is. Most of this, it goes over my head because I think it's bullshit and I don't care and I want to move on. So I don't get into it. So half the time I don't know what they're saying because I think they're speaking in circles around themselves and I can just see it. So I don't really know their positions because I don't think they know their own positions. But what do you think they are all saying?
I think this is what James Lindsay has made clear to me, is that like this leftist postmodern worldview, once you adopt this religion, it is the church of everything that exists now is wrong.
That's
and
what it
I'm
is.
smart because I figured it out. But there is nothing there, because the whole point is like, that's the whole, that like, for my all-time favorite episode of anything James Lindsay ever did is that communism doesn't know how. Because like, that's one of the tricks they play, is that like, the way they talk, you think that they're operating in the same world as everyone else, which is there's a plan at the end of this statement. Like there's a way forward from here. Destroy, and then salvation.
So the way I would describe it is James Lindsay talked about it in those 2 + 2 = 4 episodes. And if you have the opposite end of that, it's 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5 in their little goofy world. It's 2 + 2 = anything but 4.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like white Western or the Mormon monogamous marriage. Because like if he really was a postmodernist, like a true one, as you and I have talked about, it should be equally okay if Mormons want to marry how they want to marry, or call traditional what they want to call traditional. But in the new kind of what do they call it? The applied postmodernism. It's everything's okay except for that dominant, or the one that we call the oppressor group's version of it. So monogamy is fine if any one of those cultures do monogamy and want to call their culture traditionally monogamy. Polyamory or polygamy is fine in any one of those cultures if they want to call their culture polygamy. But the only one that's not okay is the one that they want to say is, you guys are the oppressor, so your version is not okay.
So yeah,
where it's like, it sounds like you're being dismissive and stupid, but it's absolutely true. That like the way they see it is everything that has power, the way they interpret power is bad.
So I can never find
that stupid, and it's that simple.
So I can never find any depth in what they're saying because there is no depth.
That is the dirty trick. Like I really think that, because James Lindsay made that clear. Because like Chris has talked about it. Because so much of the time you hear this stuff and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. I must be stupid, or I must not know enough. And the big reveal, that looking behind the curtain, is that Oz is just a little old man pulling the levers and doing literal illusions.
And that's a literal trap.
There's
I mean,
nothing there.
So many people fall into it, but that's the quintessential ex-Mormon trap. So many of them are in that trap right now.
So I think what the trap is that, like, in Helen Pluckrose talks a lot about this in that Cynical Theories book. She talks about the difference between postmodernism and applied postmodernism, and like, if I could sum it up, it's almost like the difference between.
Wait, sorry, quick interruption. I haven't heard applied postmodernism. Does that just mean it's active? People are doing it now. They think they get it. They're doing it.
So it's kind of it's more like postmodernism. Like the best way I would describe it is with John Larsen here, right? Saying like the actual postmodernist, as Chris would say, was that like. Would say that if they're doing monogamy, that's fine. If they're doing polygamy, that's fine. No no way of being is superior to
No
any other.
ranking, no
Yeah. Whereas with the applied postmodernism, it's like, okay, everything
has an activism.
everything other than the way that Westernism does it is wrong. And so that's when I think of applied postmodernism, I think of people like John Larsen, who they're doing postmodernism, but they don't really know that they're doing postmodernism. And so he's using it as sort of this gate to get him to where, like, yeah, fuck, like, because you can use that whole there is no superior method of marriage to get yourself to say, like, polygamy is all right or polyamory is all right, but then you abandon that there is no superior way when you want to say that actually polyamory is superior.
The way we said it on Jonathan Streeter's channel when we were kind of breaking it down, and I think Jonathan Streeter is the one who coined this, so to attribute it to him, is he said deconstruction for thee but not for me. And it's all just the concept of the applied postmodernist. That's a term that Helen Pluckrose tried to give to them. She's not just saying you're applying postmodernism, because that would be, you know, just the action of applying postmodernism. She's actually kind of giving it like a capital applied postmodernists, which are the Kimberly Crenshaws or the Judith Butlers of the world, who maybe they came in and they started putting it into an activism. And as Kimberly Crenshaw said, you know, you can deconstruct everything in the world. We can deconstruct the white man, we can deconstruct the religion, but you can't deconstruct my blackness or something like that. Or so it ultimately gets to the level of talking about current day critical fill in the blank theories. That's what capital A applied postmodernism is current day critical theories that have an activism in it, and that activism says we're going to go deconstruct what we consider to be the powers, and what considered to be the oppressors, but we're not going to turn that eye back on us ever, or any way that real postmodernism, as Daniel Dennett would say, is the acid without a container. It will dissect everything. It'll deconstruct everything. It will flatten out all hierarchies. But no, these guys want to have it be more of an inverted hierarchy.
Like plain postmodernism is just going, oh look, everything that exists is flawed. Applied postmodernism is let's pursue the nothing.
Okay.
And there's some sort of level, because that's a good question, because it's really kind of what we've been doing since the start of this. Because John Larsen, we say, plays dumb, but as we've been saying from the start, like Flip said, has always said, not every preacher, not every theologian's a preacher, not every preacher is a practitioner, not every practitioner is just a random attendee. Larsen is probably read in this, but he's probably not. Some of it is just being in the zeitgeist of the world of neoliberal leftism today, and those guys just hang around it long enough and they figure out the game, because it's not that hard of a game.
Exactly. It kind of feels to me like and I mean, you guys have kind of talked about this, like he was maybe headed in the right trajectory, but ever since he left Mormon Expressions and his life changed and whatever, he kind of like took a back turn in the way he thought about and processed these things.
Yeah, the John Larsen of 10 years ago, him trying to call all monogamy white supremacy, I can't imagine that happening. Flip, would you imagine him doing that?
Oh, he stepped away, so he didn't hear the question. Oh yeah, his thumbs down though. He gave a thumbs down.
There's just, and that's such a current day thing, and that's part of. So when I first talked to Larsen, and he pulled that whole thing that I talked about on Marty's channel, where he pretended he was going to talk to me, but then he ignored me. That's what I was pointing out to him. I was pointing out to him, like, Larsen, where did you get these concepts of calling this, and just what's basic, what they do nowadays? Because when I was in school 10, 15 years ago, the word they used was hegemony. They specifically use hegemony, and then somewhere around 2015 they changed that word to white supremacy. And I even remember there was a memo put out by Jonathan Haidt saying, hey folks, this is the year, this year they're changing the word hegemony to white supremacy. They're just look for it, watch for it, and you'll see it happen. They're just going to get more plain about it.
Like I've mentioned it before, but I can remember when John Larsen made really good, really scathing, really sharp, really pithy satirical comments about feminism. He'd never do that now.
But this is one of the deals with it, is because it is difficult, because we're talking about the Mormon culture, which these guys are coming at, and the Mormon culture's got a little bit more of a tougher road to hoe of trying to, say that, hey, we're still good despite some errors we made in our past. But what most of the entire world of the Kimberly Crenshaw world, the critical race theory world, what's specifically written, you can see it in the intro of that book, Critical Race Theory and Introduction, is that they say there's no such thing as incremental progress. And that's the thing that we're kind of pushing back against. Saying, no, we saw the increments. We lived through the increments. We were born.
That's the only type of progress.
Yeah, life is only a procession. That's the only way it moves forward, and it does it iota by iota, increment by increment, like whatever the fuck you want to say.
And we were born in the increment. I was born in a world. I 100%, like, I rack my brain because they try to say that my brain thinks a different way than it actually does. But I was born into a world. I can think of like the first 30 celebrities that I knew of. Probably half of them were black people, like Eddie Murphy, or, there's all sorts of them. I could go on forever about it. But, and I know that at that age, at that very young age, I didn't think about them as anything but celebrities. I know I didn't. And I was born in that world, and so were the rest of the young Mormon Salt Lakeans born around me.
Completely.
There's so many ways in which, like, I'm a weird freak. And like, I like to shop Chinese Mecha Mart and pursue all kinds of weird things, And then they tell me that, like, oh, my sexuality is just a social construct. It's like, oh, fuck you. Like, what? Like, I don't even know. It's like, just today I was at the Chinese Mega Mart, and every time I go there, like, I'm struck by the weirdness about how I stick out there compared to everybody else there. And it's because I'm a little bit a freak of nature, because, like, I am the child of a white, conservative man who was born in conservative Mormon world, the child of pioneer heritage as Mormons can be in the 1940s, and grew up before Jim Crow and all this shit. And, like, according to the Johns of this world and the Wokies of this world, is like, oh, I am just a product of Mormon, white, waspy Republican conservatism. Like, so explain to me why I literally in my brain used like 6 different languages shopping at the store today. Like, I was looking at the section, and they just had in fact, I realized it's for making adobo pork in the Philippines. They have these little combo packs of sugarcane vinegar and soy sauce. And I saw there was Arabic writing on it. And I'm like, well, I'm going to read Arabic because I've been studying Arabic. I just want to read this. I want to know this thing, And I just do this because it's just who I am.
Yeah.
But, like, according to the Johns, like, oh no, everything about my desires, everything about my world is just what the capitalists told me I like. Like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
What a stupid thing to say. Because, like, I remember arguing with them many years ago, arguing with one of my ex-mission companions, like, after our missions, I went out to see him in Nebraska, and we got on the subject of, like, homosexuality, and he's like, no, it's a choice. And I remember arguing with him, not arguing, not fighting with him, but, like, because, like, I remember in the 7th grade, and I was 13 years old, because, like, I grew up on Warner Brothers cartoons. I don't know about you guys.
Same, yeah.
But, like, remember when Bugs Bunny, in order to get a male's attention, would put on fishnet stockings and a skirt, and then show the leg and pull the stocking up? And as a little kid, you're like, what? That's weird.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in the 7th grade, and I was in class and we were reading something, and I looked at the girl next to me, and she was wearing a skirt, and I was like, oh, legs. Legs. I understand it now. Legs. And they're like, that wasn't a choice.
No.
And, like,
That's
boy
not
legs, nothing.
So
but girl legs,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
Hell
And
yeah.
that's the things, like, John Larsen thinks that it's all a social construction.
But you see, flip, it was a social construct, because had you not watched Warner Brothers, you'd probably be a homosexual.
Oh, Jesus, that's right.
So-
That's where I learned that.
They
I was
brainwashed
thinking
you
about
with
this.
Jessica Rabbit.
I was thinking about this a little bit today, and like Flip and I said on Marty's podcast that we like the original Mormon expression, although I'm sure we might find problems with it if we went back and listened to it today, only because now we're framed so well that he was so full of maybe some wackadoo ideas. But part of what the thing that we think about is like, so this whole podcast is about the church that files amicus briefs to complain or give their 2 cents on different rulings around the country. Those amicus briefs are them arguing for things that would be beneficial for them as a religion and as people who are worried about religious rights. It's not outrageous or outside of their realm of action to be able to do that stuff. And towards the end of it, John DeLynn freaks out like, I can't believe they sit around filing amicus briefs for this sort of thing.
Before I make this criticism, like, because I didn't watch this whole episode, I've seen a few bits and pieces.
Same.
Do they take issue with the church even filing an amicus brief?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, then fuck those fuckers.
Could you
fuck them
yeah.
forever? All right.
Could
People
you imagine?
are allowed to participate in society. You ass.
Could you imagine?
We live
Could you
in a
imagine
society.
Jesus? Could you imagine Jesus sitting around and even filing amicus briefs? Could you
Yeah.
imagine that?
How dare people express their feelings in a pluralistic civilization? What have we come to?
No, but no. According to John DeLynn, according to John
that's
Larsen,
fine.
According to any lefty atheist, really, other than Flip, I guess, the only thing Jesus ever said was just be nice to people and never, ever, ever make them feel bad.
Yeah. So part of what I'm saying is like this exact point that he's making right here, they could have made the point, and they used to make the same point without shoveling in the applied postmodernism, you know. And so that's kind of like how I started coming at them and saying stuff like saying, you guys you're asking for criticism, you're asking for pushback. Number one, you guys constantly get political when you say you're not political. I don't care if anybody's political, like the Ben Shapiro's of the world and all that sort of stuff. The age-old thing that like if any sort of pundit says, here's my angle, you know, as a proper postmodernist or whatever, you say, that's good. You've stated your angle and that's your angle and you get your biases. But the people who really drive everybody crazy in this world, and has been the thing that's driving everybody nuts for the past 4 or 5 years, is you have all these people who try to act like, and they're the postmodernists, they try to act like they're just speaking to objectivity or above it, or not having a political angle, or they're not, even their science doesn't have some angle in it or something like that. And everything that they do, they weave in, and even overtly weave in other politics. And so they then they brag that they're just talking about truth. And then they say, give us some criticism. And you say, well, the criticism is that you had an angle and you got political there. The criticism is that you did push on to us some critical theory that's kind of a fad in the colleges and the universities right now. And you're acting like you're not doing it. You're saying you're not doing it. And my only real point is, yes, you are doing it. And you don't have any representative and anybody pushing on the other side. And that's all fine. My point is just, you're doing it. And
Honestly,
that's it.
Right now with this whole thing, like them not taking the criticism, like John Larsen, John DeLynn, they are Kanye West right now. He was just on Lex Fridman's podcast.
Yeah.
Lex
and
Fridman is so great.
I love that guy. I just discovered him like a month
Lex
ago.
Fridman is
I've been watching for years.
If Fred Rogers had autism.
God damn it.
He has all the love and compassion of Fred Rogers and the razor sharp logic of Rain Man.
Fred Rogers went to MIT.
Rain Man Rogers.
But
the first time I ever saw him was he does this great reading of like one of my favorite poems. It's "If" by Rudyard Kipling. It's that whole like on how to be a man.
That's canceled, man. Didn't you know that's canceled?
I know that Rudyard Kipling is canceled, but
no, because I mentioned this before, but I have to bring it up again because like "If" is my dad's favorite little piece of literature.
It is such
my
a good
dad's
poem.
favorite poem. And so a few years ago, my dad adopted a puppy, and my dad named him Rudyard after Rudyard Kipling. And both of my sisters gave him shit for it.
Are you kidding me?
Oh hell!
Because he's a racist old color.
So is the only thing against Rudyard Kipling the King Louis?
Because he's a symbol of British India. That's all. That's all.
Okay. I've wondered what it was. I've never really looked it up.
Like, what else could it be?
There were
Because
some
he's a
writings.
hero of British India.
Well, yeah, is that? But there were some writings of him, not just because he's a hero of it, but there were some writings of him speaking like a colonialist. That we obviously have some superior ways of thinking and being in those.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, since we're on this subject, we all saw Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, right? Remember the Kalima thing?
Yeah.
The term thug, the anti-African American term thug. No, thug comes from the Thuggee, which were like an ethnic/religious clan in India that their whole religion was like murdering travelers and taking their shit. Kali, who's like a goddess of death and all this shit. You know why they're not a thing anymore? British colonialism.
I don't
The
know if
British
listen,
put an
Flip,
end to the murderous death cult.
you should maybe come on to it, but one of the next chapter in the social justice book is the post-colonial theory book, and Asianism, as they called it. And I mean, I remember getting familiar with it with Edward Said, and I saw a lot of stuff going around. Stuff happening in Europe right now that now they had their first Asian, their first Asian prime minister, and everybody kind of goes, Asian? What are you talking about? Asian? The guy's Indian. And you realize, like in England, they call Indians Asians, and so there's all this stuff called like Asianism, or Edward Said's original criticism of post-colonialism all started with India and England, like the original ideas of that stuff, and then that got moved over into the New World post-colonialism, but it started with Asia. And
the introductory paragraph to this article on Wikipedia: Thuggee and Dacoity Suppression Acts 1836 to 1848. The Thuggee and Dacoity Suppression Acts, I don't know about Dacoity, that's a new word to me, in British India under the East India Company rule, were a series of legal acts that outlawed Thuggee, a practice in north and central India involving robbery, ritualized murder, and mutilation on highways, and Dacoity, a form of banditry prevalent in the same region, and prescribed punishment for the same. So like this is a serious question for the Johns that pretend to want to hear from critics. Were Indians better under Thuggee or British colonialism?
That's what I was going to say, is the whole colonialism thing is 10 podcasts on its own.
Absolutely. Like, because like, are there 10 million things to point at British colonialism and go like, well, that was wicked? Like, I can't even remember it now, but like just in memories of my Wikipedia walks in the forest, there's a thing where the British murdered a bunch of Indian men while they were trapped under in a jail underground. Like this is just coming back to me, like thinking about this. But like in the grand scheme of things that I have just learned in my own walking around, like India was a nightmare. Like the caste system, the fucking caste system. Frankly, if it wasn't for the fact of Indian independence, the caste system would be all but dead by now, I wager.
So it was brought up on the most recent All Things Reconsidered. They brought up this guy who got canceled a few years ago for mentioning that, well, he wrote, not just mentioning, he's a professor who dared to kind of touch into the ideas that maybe colonialism isn't the horrid, absolutely horrid thing you perceive it to be, especially if we're talking about all incrementally getting towards a more peaceful humanity with one with another. But that doesn't mean it was perfect or did all things right. But just like they said on that podcast, like that's a whole ball of wax that when you open it, you got to go down that road of it, because we can go forever on that thing.
Well, I don't know. But, like, you know me, like for me, sometimes it's as simple as a phrase. And if we're going to tie it back into this ex-Mormon world, if humanity can get over what Catholicism and Christianity did with the Crusades, any ex-Mormon can get over what Mormonism has done in the last 200 years.
Yeah, but that's part of I agree with that 100%. And part of, I mean, I know that you have
Mormonism.
Like Christopher has like a whole lot of stuff about like just getting good with everything now, and part of like getting good now is you can't drag holding on to all this sorts of stuff. But There's a
Which
level of me that
being Kanye, if I'm gonna just be ecumenical about it, because I agreed with Kanye on some of his history points anyway.
yeah, and that's true. It's like I can see them
God,
doing
that Kanye thing. That
I
is
can see them
100% Marcuzza right there.
I
That
can see
Kanye
them
shit is
oh yeah.
Marcuzza.
Which the forgetting history and whatnot, or
No, not that. It's just I don't like on Red Letter Media. Somebody probably
yeah,
was like on the Facebook page was like, you know, somebody fill me in. What's the Kanye thing? And my answer is, it's only okay to be anti-Semitic if you're on the left.
Yeah.
That's the it's like I don't necessarily agree with Kanye. Like,
well, yeah, I don't agree.
Is he
with
100% wrong? No, but like I think
if you want to,
they're bad. But like Kanye's canceled, but Rashida Tlaib gets to continue voting in Congress. Oh, fuck the world! If that's the truth.
I re-downloaded College Dropout after the controversy. I've only been listening to more Ye.
And okay, and just because it always comes up, because like every time I satirize the left, I'm accused of being a Trumper. I'm not kidding. I can name 0 Kanye songs. I can say 0 Kanye lines. I know 0 Kanye melodies. If somebody says, hey, what about that song? I go, oh, I guess I've heard that. But that's exactly how much I care about Kanye as an artist.
I knew
not
one song before.
Just not my thing. Just as a purely neutral observer, Kanye, like what he said about Jews is like 50% as wicked. No, I'm being too generous. Like NPR's coverage of the Israeli-Palestine conflict is 10,000 times more evil than anything Kanye said. Because NPR is pretending like I and you and Jared and Christopher can't go read the Hamas charter in English published on their website right now today. They want people to know what they believe. Anybody can go read it. NPR pretends like they don't know what's going on there.
Okay, but here's probably the number one woke argument you'd get, and at least the first basic one. Ye has a larger audience, 38 million. NPR, 9 million. So,
and I don't know how many hits the English translation of Hamas's charter has got.
You got to be careful.
But I can tell you, I read the whole fucking thing. Quick challenge to NPR journalists who will never listen to me. I have read the entire Hamas charter in English. Have you?
So it's not that long.
It's not that big a document.
It's not, but I still got bored.
Yeah.
So
did you not get to the part about how they will not stop continuing an armed struggle until there are no Jews in Palestine? And by Palestine, they mean all of the Middle East.
No. I mean, I think I got the gist of that, but no, I didn't get the specific.
No, there's a whole section.
So here's a part of the Marcuzza thing that you're saying is a part of our criticism with these guys. Like on these very podcasts, the reason we pulled this one up and we're still going through it 3 episodes later, but it started out again with Larsen saying, do you think maybe we could talk to somebody with a conservative leaning? If we keep them on a good leash and keep the muzzle on nice and tight and then only let them think of people. Meanwhile, John Larsen's been just blubbering out his worldview and his stuff for years, which definitely leans into politics, but that stuff's free to just go everywhere. So once again, left-wing activism all must be forgiven, and even right-wing thought must be controlled. But this is John DeLynn trying to claim that he pulls off neutrality. He thinks he really pulls off neutrality. And our only point is like, no, you're nowhere near neutrality.
And that kind of rounds back to why I brought up Kanye in the first place, because there was a specific part of that interview where Lex was basically like, in a way, I don't remember how it quite got brought up, but he was just like, you need someone who you trust to call you out on your bullshit. I'm calling you out on your bullshit. And Kanye was basically being the Johns here. I don't trust you. Let's move on.
You need a wife. Kanye needs a wife. That's actually one of my favorite things. I listened to a Daily Wire backstage the other day, and it was just like those guys talking about, and this isn't like a popular opinion, but they're talking about how you should get married young, and I'm like almost to the point where I'm almost like to the point where I'm like, yep, yeah, get married young, just do it, because like you're not an adult before you get married, and like get married and then hopefully become an adult with this person. Maybe it doesn't work, but like you got to put some amount of bullshit in it. And one of the things Ben Shapiro pointed out was like once you become a certain amount of famous, there's less and less people who are willing to call you out on your bullshit. You have a wife around and she's fucking always willing to call you on your bullshit.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's one of the best, most humbling things for him, because he's just saying
that's one of those things that Jordan Peterson talks about with relationships, where it's like you need someone you can contend with.
Yes.
Which, like, I already know, like, woke people are like, contend, and they just hear like what's the Mormon equivalent of the word contend? Contention.
Contention.
Yeah, contention.
Yeah, exactly. Contention. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. No, the woke are as exactly adverse to contention as the Mormons are. There we go.
It's to their own detriment. I mean, they're just so insular that their knives get less sharp. That's all there is to it. And that's what John Larsen seems like to me too. He seemed like a sharp knife years ago, and now it seems like if people only know his side and his arguments, they're impressed with him. But if people know anything else outside of it, he just seems like a blubbering fool. Yeah.
That's another NPR fight I got into just recently about something to do with feminism. I always start by either say something satirical or just plainly state a fact of reality and just see what happens, right? And somebody immediately comes in with, "You're so clueless. Be more obviously clueless. Be more obvious that you've never read a book, you clueless." So I always engage them. And then it comes out like, "Oh, I have a degree in forensic psychology and stats." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah?" And I call the bluff on the stats. And this goes on for a few things. And then it comes out to like, and I'm like, did they not teach you reading comprehension at your school? Because you keep mentioning school. And they're like, "Oh, of course it comes out with the personal attacks." So when I reference them to when they started out with calling me clueless. And it always goes like that every goddamn time without fail. It's like magic with them.
It's so funny because like right now we're living in the middle of in the wake of the Pelosi attacks. Always remember October 28th.
Where were you on the day
2022?
Pelosi was.
So
and it feels just the same as the Justice Smollett.
Come out on that, but like
it won't.
It's obvious that the Trump-loving right-wing wave of violence narrative, it's not that.
But they're still trying to do that.
Crazy guy.
And the reason I brought it up in the middle of that is because, like, if you go and look at any blue check mark right now on Twitter, they're full throat. They didn't learn anything from Justice Smollett. They didn't learn anything from all the other 100 situations. They're not just trying. I don't even think they want to, because they kind of go, "We only have 3 days to make hay out of this,"
Look,
but
this is the thing they don't understand, is that they don't know that I'm an expert. And I have examined all of the available evidence. And the fact is that the knife attack on Mr. Pelosi, God bless him, I hope he recovers, was actually 93% peaceful.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they're just full throat buying like the initial story and using it to try to say that we're still in Trump's America and getting attacked by MAGAs and whatever. And there's obviously problems with that story. And they don't just even have like a second of caution to go, "Woo, let's wait on this one for a second here."
Because this is one of those things where, like, I know that, like, if you ask them, they scoff and go, "Duh, duh, duh." But when was the actual time that Trump in any way, shape, or form advocated for political violence or any kind of violence? Because, like, we all know when Democrats have done it, but what is the actual time Trump did it? And this is the thing, I can already hear the lefties in my life, including my siblings, going, "Oh, you're defending Trump now?" Like, no, I'm defending reality. Like, there are 10 million reasons why I don't like Trump. Did not vote for him, would not vote for him, will not vote for him because of my principles. But my principles also say that if you're going to tell me that he incites violence, I'm going to have to call your fucking bluff.
It's like they constantly ask you, like, "Well, okay, but if you don't like this guy, then why aren't you unfair to him?"
Exactly.
That's exactly
Like,
it.
Yeah. If you don't support him, why don't you hate him at least as much as I do?
Yeah.
Because
Why don't you support us and
because I grew up with Fred Rogers, and what I learned is that everyone's special, even the people you don't like.
Which is it kind of goes along with, I mean, because I have a phrase I use, same game, different name.
Yeah, boy! How do I reach these kids? 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 How do I reach these kids?